The first one is the update on Public Arts Committee with Brenda Van Kuren. Brenda,
Hello.
good seeing you again.
Very good to see you, and thank you for attending that meeting where we pitched the Gallery Windows project last year. So my name is Brenda Van Kuren, and I think I am the acting vice chair at this time. We are down to 3 members of record that I am aware of. Cher Holloman, who may have joined us or who may be joining us shortly, and Mark Allen. Mark Allen is a saxophone musician who teaches or has taught at the elementary school. This COVID pandemic has hit him particularly hard because he's unable to perform in public as he used to. The Arts Committee, last year, we prepared our mission, vision, and values statements. They are posted at the city's website. And so if you want me to read them, I will. If not, you're welcome to go to the city's website and see them. I think that what I could do is at least read the mission statement, which was based off of the city's own mission statement, which is very simple. The mission statement for the Cortez Public Arts Advisory Committee is that it is committed to enriching the cultural environment and experiences of the people of the city of Cortez through education, sustainable support, coordination, and promotion of the arts. And so we have a vision statement and values. One of the values is arts can be accessible to all, and supporting all forms of arts. And so that mission, those statements were created because we needed some more guidance and understanding and common understanding and agreement about the purpose of the Arts Committee for the city of Cortez. And that was helpful. I helped lead that workshop, and we got consensus on what those statements should be. So I found that to be useful. I would like to let you know that the governing document that ordained the committee into being is ordinance number 1232, series 2017. And the Arts Committee was established in 2017. And I think that whoever is going to be a liaison, perhaps it will be a council member, which might be great, ought to become very familiar with that document. And then I think that that document, from a formative perspective, needs to be revisited and perhaps amended, perhaps even amended and restated. When we had governed ourselves last year, we found some issues that the Arts Committee members could use some better understanding on how to govern itself and how to fulfill its role. So in a nutshell, last year, the Arts Committee had a budget that was approved by the then City Council in the amount of $15,000, yet it had rolled $5,000 over from the prior fiscal year. And so we did not even get close to spending it all. We had some issues with, I think, logistically and in timeline fashion of the committee's approval for certain projects, like the Gallery Windows project. From the time of the approval by the committee or recommendation for approval and submission to the City Council for its approval, once again, to actually funding a project. So there were some choppy steps there that were a bit they created some hurdles and a little bit of a challenge in terms of being able to turn around a project. So I think that whole process of funding anything from the Arts Committee, if it goes on in the future, should be considered. Before I get into offering up an example of one of the more successful projects, or maybe more well-known projects that the committee completed last year, I think that the City Council is in a great position to really reflect on the essential nature of the Arts Committee. It may be considered non-essential, it certainly is non-emergency, but it is run by a group of volunteers, 7 members, they all volunteer time, and some members volunteer and spend much more time and attention attending to coming up with projects or even managing them or being involved. It really does depend on what each person can contribute. We ran into some issues with expectations and reality and how much time anybody could actually commit. The other thing that the city council might consider is that if the financial situation is such that you now have a good bead on your financial reports, then you might consider what is an appropriate amount of funding. Is even the existence of an arts committee something that is necessary or needed? And so from an optimistic viewpoint, arts is a wonderful thing that can affect everybody. A committee is not necessarily needed in order to support arts in this community. In the projects that I was involved in last year, I met so many wonderful people in the community and some great donors who were highly supportive of the arts committee activities. And I also met people who would even be so supportive that they would function without an arts committee. And so it can be a great public facing, if you will, agent of the city of Cortez and offer something that is optimistic for the citizens and the tourists who visit and spend dollars in Cortez and even surrounding communities, those people who come in and spend money in Cortez. It could be really optimistic and positive for those people. And so having said that, you've got a lot to consider. The liaison spends at least, I would say, 3 hours a week dealing with administrative issues related to the Arts Committee. And Eric Aikenoya, who was here before, he was over at the library, as you know, he was the liaison. I would say that there were times when he spent much more than that. And it became at times a little bit challenging because we faced some issues with our procedures and processes. I think those things could be ironed out, and they should be, if you would like the Arts Committee to remain and move forward. Having said that, I'd like to give you an example of the gallery window. I'd like to tell you about the gallery windows project in a nutshell. I prepared a report that I submitted to Eric, and I believe he submitted them to the council members. If you would like to see a copy of this, I just forwarded this report to John Doherty and Linda Smith, so you could take a look at it and review it. So it might help you decide what it is that you would like in the way of an arts committee going forward. But in a nutshell, that gallery windows project was effectively a limited concept gallery operated on Main Street in a space that was donated. It was a former yoga studio. So the Arts Committee was able to use part of that space, especially the very nice window space, to exhibit professional level artwork. And in that space was at one time or altogether for the 3-month project roughly, $47,000 worth of artwork listed or both for sale and not for sale during that project. That project generated $2,545 in pre-tax sales. There was $509 in commissions collected, and contributions from the city, individuals, and businesses, or the cost of the project that made it happen, totaled $11,605. And so that project had 73 days of artwork on exhibit. There were 46 pieces of artwork exhibited, 8 pieces sold, and there were 38 pieces listed for sale, 8 not for sale. 15 artists from the community were represented in that project. The most successful aspects of it were when there were gallery openings, when people could actually be invited into the space, and there could be some interaction among artists and patrons and browsers. I calculated some of the donated labor hours that were donated labor hours and also paid labor hours. I think it was underreported. 213 total labor hours that were donated, and then 250 hours of labor that was both donated and paid. And so that was a lot of time. Out of that project, the city had obtained some exhibition furnishings that were manufactured by one of the members and another contributor. Exhibition furnishings totaled about roughly $1,800 in value. And so that those furnishings are now residing over at the share house in storage. We can move those to a city facility somewhere. or they can be donated to the share house. It's up to the city on how it would like to, what it would like to do with those assets. So the city contributed in that project $3,450, and that was only 30% of the contributions for that project. Corporate contributors were $4,100, other donors over $3,900. Total contributions to get that project off the ground was $11,605. And so that was a pretty good project. It was highly involved. I don't know if I would recommend it for the future, but who knows, it might bring something up in your mind that might offer you some inspiration for how you would like a committee to operate in the future. So I think that what I'd like to do is, if Cher is available, she can chime in, and then I'm also going to offer this to any council member who might be considering becoming a liaison. I'm happy to share whatever information I can that could be useful in helping orientate you into becoming a liaison. You might also, council members, decide that the Arts Committee needs to remain on hiatus for the near term because of the COVID situation. That is our reality. And so I think that so many aspects of city operations are affected. And so, but I'd like you to consider that at some point, supporting public arts and arts activities in this community is an absolutely optimistic thing to do. And we need some things that are positive to look forward to. So definitely this might be a formative time, a building time, a rebuilding time, and that you might look at it that way. So having said that, I open up the floor to questions, and I'm happy to answer any questions I can.
Brenda, I'd like to announce David Rainey, council member, has been assigned to the Arts Committee.
Great.
And he's online right here.
Hi,
Fantastic. Hi,
sorry, I haven't reached out to you yet, but I do have a great deal of experience in the gallery business, as well as being a working artist for a number of years. So I feel fairly comfortable and hopefully can give you some good input through time.
Fantastic. So I think perhaps we could connect and then we can get into more detail and support. I want to be upfront with all of you. I'm not sure whether I have the capacity at this time to continue on with intense work, but I certainly wouldn't want to abandon John Doherty or the City Council. And I would be really happy to work through any transition and to support anything going forward, if, you know, assuming that you're going to continue supporting the Arts Committee. It sounds like you are, because we now have a liaison.
Absolutely.
So fantastic. Welcome, David, and thank you.
Absolutely. We'll be in touch.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you so much, Brenda.
You're
Any
welcome.
other council members have anything to say to Brenda? Okay, we appreciate your being here, Brenda, and sharing that with us. The next item on the agenda is the monthly finance update with Ben Burkett. Ben, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, you bet. Good evening, everybody. So the update I'm providing you all with tonight is the update I would have provided to you last month. So you'll get the similar update in the next meeting as well, just for the most recent. I'm going to share my screen with you here, just so that way we can all follow along and know what we're on the same page. Excuse me. So before I dive into the COVID update, something I just want to share with you all is, as you all know, our team is consistently looking at improving our controls environment. And one of the things that we've been working diligently on, and Sarah Coffey, who's on the team, has been working quite hard on this effort. And what that is we did a vendor cleanup. And a vendor cleanup, vendors are those individuals who we pay for services or goods to. And you want to make sure you manage your vendor list appropriately, so that way you don't, you reduce any risk of misappropriation of money. So you don't create fake vendors for which people can pay to or whatnot. or even just unintentional errors for maybe paying an inappropriate vendor who it was meant for somebody else. So this cleanup entailed going from 30,000 vendors that we had in our system to where we're at today is at about 2,100 vendors. So it's a big deal. I just want to share that with you. It's important from a controls environment. We have a little bit more work to do on that, but I can't thank Sarah Coffey enough on her effort on that. So moving on, I'll move on to the COVID impact on the city. And please, as we go, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to holler or stop me. I also know that occasionally I break up sometimes. So if that's the case, please stop. So what we're talking about, if you remember from a sales tax perspective, back in April, the original projection was a $1.1 million decrease in sales tax receipts. And every month we're updating it. And so what we have here is an update of just if you look at the table there, if you haven't had a chance to look at it, where we stand. And going up through June, you can see here is where we are unofficially today. And what I'm happy to share that the June collections, which are for May activity, was higher than our budgeted revenue. That's a very positive trend there, because as you know, we were looking at a 15% decrease is what we were looking at. And so what that caused us to relook at how we're projecting our sales tax decreases for the remainder of the year. And because when you look at the numbers here, these variances over here on the right-hand side of the table, and you look month over month, we're fairly in line actually with our budget, even with COVID, okay? And so what we thought was, let's go ahead and reproject what we believe our losses our sales tax decrease would be for the rest of the year. And what that meant was we, in essence, changed, as you see here, the variances. We went from a 5% variance from July through September. Originally, that was a 15% variance. And then October through December was revised downwards from a 10% to a 7% variance. So what's the overall impact? When we reproject, what it's actually showing is we're looking at a potential decrease of sales tax collections of about 375,000 rounded. That is much improved from the original projection that we had back in April of 1.1 million. We will continue to monitor how we're going forward. There's still a lot of volatility in the market. There's still a lot of volatility and concern with unemployment and benefits coming to the end of the month, whether there'll be another stimulus or not. But we felt like we could back off on some of that, the decreases that we were projecting. Now, at the end of the year, just a reminder, the 7% decrease we see here in sales tax, that is assuming a recession sets in at the end of the year. We will, again, as we go, we'll continue to monitor this and update it accordingly. So that's positive news there on that front. Is there any questions regarding the sales tax before I move on to lodger's tax?
I have a question, Ben.
You bet.
Do you know what months are the height of our tourist season then?
Yeah, it fluctuates a little bit, but it's from June through September.
Okay.
I think when we get to the next section, you can into the financial report, I actually have a graph that'll kind of show that for you. So we can look at it again there and bring that up.
Okay, because we could still miss out on a lot of sales tax over the next 3 months.
Absolutely, and that was a little bit of a concern of driving it back, right? So this 5% decrease that we continue to, continue to forecast is that to try and knowing that we're going to get hit a little harder on tourism. But I know when I'm looking around and driving around town and, you see public and, when I look over the 4th of July weekend, there's a lot of tourism and trailers going through town. I think maybe what's happened is the tourism shifted a little bit to RVing, so I don't know. That's a feeling, right? And that's exactly why we're going to continue to monitor this. But we felt like with the level of activity that we're seeing, it felt reasonable and appropriate to adjust and improve our numbers to maybe what's more realistic. Now, of course, if you all disagree and you'd like us to go more conservative in nature, absolutely, I can shift this back to where it was. And if you scroll down a couple more pages, there is the original analysis is there. So you can see in the table what it originally was in the appendix.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Lodger's tax, on the other hand, it's not doing so well. Lodger's tax is frankly being obliterated. And so much so that with the several months of trends that we see from April, May, June, that we actually revised the July through December Lodger's tax collections and revised them downwards. Originally, the Lodger's tax was at a 50% for July through September, and then October through November was a 10%. Just felt it was maybe more prudent just to keep it a consistent 60% decrease for the remainder of the year. And that is hopefully it's a worst case scenario and doesn't continue to fall out. But what that means is the original decrease that we're looking at was about an $85,000 decrease to budget. What we're projecting now is about a $124,000 decrease projection to budget. So that's not so good. The impact now is we really have to manage the expenses, the disbursements that come out of this fund, the Lodger's Tax Fund. And if you remember, there's 3 disbursements that come out. The majority of it is Mesa Verde country. The second is 15% has to go to beautification to the general fund as required by code. And then also by code, 5% has to go to the general fund for administrative costs for like city manager and such and budgeting, okay? So the impact here is a decision has to be made, how to progress. And one of the things that we've done, at least for tonight, with council's guidance, how you like to progress, is tonight on the consent agenda, there's payment to Mesa Verde country, okay? Mesa Verde country gets a quarterly remittance or disbursement from the city of Cortez to help fund the tourism and the advertising that they do for Cortez in the area. There's about 40, the exact number here, I have it here, about, where is it? 42,500 is coming out of the general fund, and that is continued to expected to be dispersed, and that is on the consent agenda tonight. However, what is not on the consent agenda is a remittance of $43,750,000 that would come out of the Lodger's Tax Fund. That is not on there because if we paid this $43,750 to Mesa Verde country, based off of the projection you see in front of you, the Lodger's Tax would have a deficit of about $40,000. I've discussed it with Kelly over at Mesa Verde country. Of course, it's a burden. It's difficult for her to manage, but as a true team player, if you want to say, she understands the difficult times we are in and wants to be a part of the solution. But I leave it to council to say, hey, would you like us to go ahead and continue knowing we would put the continued disbursements, knowing we'd put the Lodger's Tax in a deficit. And I know maybe this is not the forum for you to do a vote, right? Because this is a work session that would have to be in a public setting, but something to consider and think about, and we can have discussions. If we want to make a payment, we can do that in the next council meeting, or we can do what's called an out-of-line check and make that. But just know if right now, based off the forecast you have in front of you, the remaining amount that we would be able to disperse out of this fund for any expenditures is about $4,000. So a decision really has to be made on that. Are there any questions about that? Kind of went through it quickly.
Gavin, I have one. I guess, did I miss that? So is this payment for the quarter that just happened with Mesa Verde, or is this payment for this coming quarter?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So the way we pay, which I had to get straight to, is we pay in advance. Okay, so we pay three quarters in advance. So we've paid to date, we've paid $88,000 already. That's for January for the first quarter. Next one was April for Q2. Now we're in Q3 quarter.
Okay. And you did say that Kelly's on board with this suggestion.
She is, and I don't want to misspeak for her in that, you know, it's a challenge for everybody. And I don't want to say it's not for her, right? But she's managing as she can, right? In fairness to her. One of the promises I promised to you all, I promised to her, is we're doing a monthly update. And as things change and we see remittances coming in higher, that we would, you know, continue with the agreement of making those further disbursements at a later time.
Gotcha.
But of course, it's if you all would like to go into a deficit, go ahead and pay. We can do that. So that would be guidance needed.
Makes sense.
You bet. Any further questions? Okay. Moving on, I don't have a lot of time, but what I'll quickly share with you is, as you know, here's the financial report for budget versus actuals for May, okay? You'll get a new one next week for the month of June, right? We're always doing it in arrears. What you'll notice is we have more funds added this time, right? We have 4 funds that we're providing info on: the general fund, the street improvement fund, the rec center fund, and the equipment fund. The reason why we're doing these 4 is these 4 funds are what where the sales tax collections and remittances go to, right? So that's why I'm sharing that with you, so to give you a little more insight into those. As you remember, one of the things we talked about in our budget meetings is kind of your fund balance and how are you progressing month over month. And a quick, easy way that I'm trying to make it easy and decipherable and understanding is this page. Every fund will have a similar page, okay? Very simple: revenues, expenses, net income, right? Of course, I'm using the governmental terms here. But as you can see, revenues have come in pretty good for May. Expenses are maintaining, so our change in net position is still positive. One thing I don't want to give you all an incorrect impression. By the modification we made with our sales tax revenues by reducing the 1.1 million decrease to a more, not that it's positive, but to a $375,000 decrease, is we still have other revenues that are impacted that we really haven't discussed, okay? So our total revenues are still down, right? They're not just down because of sales tax. They're also down because from budget, we were actually expecting to get property tax remittances. We're not getting those. Because of COVID-19, the rec center, or not, excuse me, not the rec center, the recreation programs that are have revenues within the general fund are down. We have the GOCO grant as well, which was planned for. We would still get it. It's just deferred to another year, okay? So just to give you an idea, I don't want people to think, hey, we're going to be flush with money because the sales taxes are coming in a little better. No, we still have challenges. We still have to be diligent in how we're dispersing our resources. And as you can see, I believe with that total expense line there in that net change of position, we are managing at this point. Any questions there? Okay. Real quick, just coming down to, as I promised you, Rachel, is the sales tax. You kind of wanted to see how we're progressing year over year. Here is an example that you can see, okay? The blue thick bars, that's this year. The blue line is last year's sales tax remittances. And as you can see, June, July, August are where our highs are. We do drop down a little bit, and then we kind of typically you pick up in this latter quarter of the year, typically because of the holiday season where there's some spending that you see. So there's still a possibility that we can come in worse than what was projected, but that's where we're going to continue to monitor and share and with you all. On the other side, just to give you an idea, marijuana tax. Again, the thick blue bars, that's the current year. The green lines, that's last year's. As you can see, we are way over what we collect in marijuana. Okay. Now the marijuana tax that you see in this light blue, that is part of our sales tax numbers. Okay. Because we don't have a separate marijuana tax. That is part of our sales tax. We're just breaking it out separately to show you how this is actually, the marijuana is actually propping up, I think, some of the decreases we would have otherwise seen in sales tax. So with that, that's most of my time, but I want to give you all, is there any questions or anything I can clarify? Okay, Mike, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you. Before I continue on, I'd like to make an announcement that due to the crowded schedule and the agenda for the regular session, we've decided to move the quasi judicial item for the New View Pharmacy to the end of the session. So we're going to have all the rest of the agenda before the New View hearing. So I just wanted to give you all a heads up on that. Let's see, the next item on the agenda for the workshop is the, let's see, the Police Department training update with Chief Vern Knuckles. Chief, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Well, I'll be fairly brief because our training is actually down for the year. Right now, our second quarter training hours at 433 hours. To give a little bit of perspective, 2019 was 1,022 hours. 2018 was 2,118 hours. So we were down 57.6% for 19 and 80% for 2018 with our training. That being said, we're still doing what we can to get the training that's required for our officers to have. This year we've had in-house training in arrest control, firearms, less than lethal, including taser and OC. And we've done in-house training on the extreme risk protection order, or the red flag law. So our officers are familiar with that. Human trafficking, new drug laws, suicide prevention, some firearms for new officers, and standardized field sobriety tests. We've also, we take advantage of any internet classes that we can get on. To date, we've been through de-escalation and minimizing use of force, courtroom testimony, tactical patrol considerations, understanding and responding to excited delirium calls, written communication and report writing, responding to people with mental illness, interacting with mental illness as a first responder, ethics in law enforcement, crisis intervention training, an overview, not the full week class of CIT, anti-bias training for law enforcement, violence in the workplace, community policing, workplace safety, use of force, driving distracted, and officer survival 1 and 2. So we still try to get the training we feel is pertinent for our officers to have, even though we're not able to attend classes. Online classes aren't the optimal forum. but they do help. Trainings that have been canceled due to COVID-19, officer survival, basic supervision and management, the week-long CIT training has been canceled, and that's a critical training for officers out on the street. Standardized field sobriety testing, advanced roadside impairment driving enforcement, A-RIDE, that's for DUI enforcement and driving under the influence of drugs. That's been canceled. Restraining order class, school resource officer conference has been canceled, and threat pattern recognition has been canceled. So we're still working through trying to get some of those figured out and find classes that are available so we can get our officers to it. So that's basically the rundown of the training up through the second quarter for the police department. So anybody have any questions?
Vern, I had a question. Have you had much response from the red flag notice? I noticed you mentioned it earlier.
The ERPO?
Yes.
The emergency no, not much. So.
Okay. And how is the suicide prevention program coming?
I mean, as far as law enforcement, we really have we're really limited in what we provide for suicide prevention, outside of responding and assisting EMS and Axis. But I mean, we do send our officers to training so they can kind of recognize CIT is part of that, you know.
Council, any other questions for Chief Knuckles?
No, I don't have any. I'm just going to say welcome aboard.
Yeah.
Thank you, Orly.
I wanted to echo what Orly just said. Welcome aboard, Chief Knuckles, and we're glad to see you here.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here.
Okay. Item number C on the original workshop agenda was Cortez Real Enhancement Association CREA update with Executive Director Mark Drudge. We decided to cancel that to a further date because Mark wanted to address the council in person. So we've eliminated that from this workshop agenda. So item number E on the agenda for tonight is the discussion on Zoom versus in-person council meetings and having the public in attendance, with the city manager, John Doherty, speaking.
Thank you for that lead-in, Mayor. I just wanted to have a discussion with council. Are you ready to go back to live meetings in the council chambers, or do you want to continue doing Zoom meetings? We do have a micro mister to decontaminate the room before and after the meetings. So it's up to council. If you're ready and willing, we can start going back to live meetings, or we can continue to do Zoom, but I thought it'd be a good time for discussion.
This is Arlena. I would like to go back to in-person meetings.
And I'm still comfortable with Zoom.
Yeah, I'm also comfortable with Zoom myself.
I agree with those two guys. I'm comfortable with Zoom.
I'd be, whenever the rest of the council is ready, I'll be ready to do in-person council meetings.
I would would like to move to in-person meetings. Is there a way we can have a hybrid meeting then? So those of us that are ready to meet in person, we are there at the council chambers, and then we can have folks, council members and participants Zoom in if they want to, so that people can have an option.
I'm waiting
This
for
is
Mike to
Green.
respond. Yeah, there you go.
I don't know where my video is, but I think I'm speaking. All of the context for meetings, video, online, Zoom, WebEx, whatever. The only reason we're able to do it is because of emergency powers. The context for starting to hybridize things, we can probably do the technology, but it may put some limitations on meetings, given I don't know that you will be able to communicate with your fellow council members as effectively or not. We can look at doing it, but this is all a strange new world, and I'm tending to favor one or the other. Either everybody's on Zoom, so it's all the same, or everybody's in the room, so it's all the same. But it's your direction, how you want to do it. And I think we just need to understand that it's probably, I don't know what's going to happen after the emergency goes away. I don't know that we'll be able to do this or not. The state law currently doesn't support it.
So is the issue a legal issue or a technological issue?
For sure, it's a legal issue. We're sort of built on an in-person system. And so this is all, it's yet to be seen what's going to happen. There's been no legal challenges to it yet because it's all sort of new and nothing terrible has happened that anybody wants to sue anybody about. In other words, somebody hasn't lost a big hearing or whatever. And so it's unknown. It may be a couple of years before this all works out. So it's mostly legal. The state open meetings law doesn't authorize anything but in-person meetings. That's the concept.
So since we're a home rule community, can we make our own rules about it?
Home rule applies to when there's not it's not considered a matter of statewide importance, and open meetings is generally considered a matter of statewide importance. The only technological question I have is the ability of the public to attend. And the internet is not as accessible to everyone as I thought and other people thought. It may be accessible on phones, but maybe some problems come up, people can't participate, citizens to address and things like that. So,
but they can come in person if we do both, if we do a hybrid.
they could, yeah. I mean, I can look into it and see what some other places are doing, but so far I think all I'm seeing is one or the other. You're in person or you're Zoom or WebEx or whatever.
Mike or John, have either of you reached out to the commissioners or Shaq? I see that he's on here, to ask them about their setup, because they've been doing it this whole time and they've managed to do a really well job with it. It would be great if we could have a setup like that.
Your tech people are currently working on getting it set up. John can explain the funding and whatever, but I'm really impressed with what the IT people of Phil's crew is getting ready to roll out here. It just takes some time to get the equipment, to get some of the lines set up. We have a slightly different meeting type than the commissioners do, so we've got some idiosyncrasies to deal with. But my understanding is we're moving forward with getting everything so it will be a tier 1 setup.
Hey, Mike, last night I saw in the news, all but one city council member was on Zoom. One city council member was in the council chambers, and there were actual people in the council chambers. They opened it up and said that if you don't have internet, you can come in the chambers and watch it.
That's one of the requirements, is to provide access to the internet to the people that don't have it or can't get it. So, you know, I'm up to do whatever council wants. I'll see if I can find out. I will find out more about hybrid meetings and how to get them set up. You know, tonight you're looking at one concept of it. If people don't agree to a Zoom meeting and they want an in-person meeting, I don't know what you do for certain things, quasi-judicial matters, land use matters, things like that, licensing matters. So there's some legal hurdles to overcome.
Well, it sounds like it's worth looking into. So I would like to hear what the possibility is for a hybrid meeting at the least.
We can do that.
I agree.
Yeah, I
agree
think
with,
this it's gonna be
Rachel.
like
I think
this
we
for a
should look
while.
into hybrid meeting possibilities.
I would be in favor of that.
Yeah.
I
Thank you for
would
bringing that up,
too.
Rachel.
All right,
Uh,
thank you.
Sue Betts, what's your opinion on the meetings?
I like the Zoom meetings, but I'd be okay with the hybrid.
Yeah,
Okay,
we need to make this more accessible to the general public, and whether or not, like, if that starts with us like viewing it just at City Hall first, like we need to start doing something. Because
I agree with that.
yeah. So could we work towards trying to, at least if we can't come to a conclusion on a hybrid meeting by the next meeting, at least having a viewing option at the City Hall by next meeting, so people can go and watch. And even, I don't know if they could still provide input, but that would be great if they could provide input as well.
The one thing we haven't talked about is we also don't know what the health department or the governor is going to do at the state level about social gathering. You know, they may.
Sorry. I was just going to bring up from the from Polis passing that on June 20th about required mask wearing in government buildings and institutions. So that would be able to be also impressed upon our City Hall, correct?
I thought that was just for state buildings. I didn't think the governor's order covered our buildings, but I could be wrong.
Oh, okay.
But that's a
Wouldn't matter,
decision.
it's already in place here.
There is one already in place in the City Hall for people to be wearing masks, at least in the common areas, John?
Yes.
I would also
And then,
go ahead, Amy.
oh, sorry, I was just about to talk about the structure of, it's been, of course, a few months since I've been into the chambers, but the way it is set up is, you know, the council members are pretty much shoulder to shoulder. And then that would also, most meetings run over the 2 hours where, you know, they're saying if you're under 2 hours inside, you have better chances. So just, I guess, talking about structure, if everybody is starting to lean towards being in person, and I do agree highly that our constituents do have access and they need to be able to see us in action and leading with conviction.
Mm-hmm.
Just talking about structure of the room, if we are heading towards that way.
Right, I could see if it's a well-attended meeting that we could even open up into the extra room, like the extra rooms that we have. Like we could spread people out if we needed to.
I would say also providing access to Wi-Fi. Is there a guest Wi-Fi at City Hall or the library that could be on 24 hours? That way, when our meetings are late in the evening or run pretty late, people can be parked in the parking lot and at least use their phones to listen in.
Wasn't the library working on that?
We're working on it currently. We have a meeting on Thursday to discuss it.
Okay.
Today we will be going over how to join a Zoom meeting. We've got a couple options, but we'll go through the first one via email invitation.
David?
Email invitation for a
Yes.
Zoom meeting.
Do you have a video going?
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm trying to get back on track here.
Invitation. You can click this invitation and you will be prompted to either download or launch
As
Zoom.
if nobody's been on a Zoom meeting before. I love it.
You see this message waiting for host to start this meeting.
You can mute yourself, David, if you can't get that off.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so it sounds like we've got some ideas floating around. When can, Mike, when can you give us a timeline of when you would have that information available? Would you be able to have it by next meeting for like the hybrid?
I will if that's what you want.
I would like it by next meeting.
Yes.
And then you want to know about both the legal and the technology to be able to do hybrid meetings,
That would be great.
including remote places for citizens to attend.
Yes.
And then John, what town did you say had the, you know, the one person set up here, one person, you saw that on the news?
Last night, Denver news. Denver
does it? Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Denver was going back to electronic meetings is what I had seen. I'm not exactly sure to what extent they mean.
So what I'm hearing, the next meeting will be Zoom again. By 4 to 2 to
I think
1 vote.
ideally it could be a hybrid. But
Because it might time to do the research and we don't have the technology.
So what about, say, you know, to keep our meetings short, we start meeting once a week and keep our agenda smaller? I mean, that's just a possibility to be able to meet in person safely, you know, mandate masks within city buildings, have hand sanitizer and social distance in place.
That's authorized probably under the emergency ordinance that we have. So if that's what we needed to do, or if council felt they wanted to do, we could do that.
We have no way of knowing how many people are going to be in attendance, especially. And to give you an example, the meeting of the land use code, there were more than 10 people, should I say.
yeah, I think now it's 500, right? Isn't it something? So, I mean, I think that number was over 400 that night, which is also very impressive, but.
Right.
So John, I do think that ideally, if we could go hybrid for the next meeting, that would be great. I understand there's a lot of research to do, people to contact. So yeah, I guess Zoom.
Yeah, I think if we look into the hybrid possibilities also, John and Mike, you know, we'll see what we can do with that. Just keep us posted and let us know how it's going.
Will do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for being flexible and trying to help us figure this out.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other discussions on the Zoom meetings? Okay, the next item on the agenda is a discussion on requiring face masks to be worn in public, and city attorney creating an ordinance as such. City Manager John Doherty.
I'm a little surprised I didn't get more hate mail, even though I still got about at least a half dozen to forward on you guys. this came up because a lady called to complain, said she was in Durango and everybody there was wearing masks, and why didn't the city of Cortez? And I forwarded that on to the council. And one of the council members said, maybe we should discuss this. And I said, I will put it on the agenda for discussion. My advice, and if the police chief is still on here, he can advise. Our advice is not to do an ordinance requiring face masks because we do not have the manpower to enforce it. And what's the point to doing an ordinance if we can't do anything with it? Now, I'll open it up to you guys. I know you've gotten a lot of no's and a lot of yeses, so discussion's been out there, so I'll let you guys handle it.
I just want to emphasize that we're just here for discussion. We're not making any votes or having any decisions tonight. This is for the people in the audience also. We're taking comments. A lot of people have been emailing and phoning in and writing in their comments, whether they're for or against masks. And I want to encourage everyone to keep on doing that. We're listening to what the people of the community feel about the requirements for wearing masks in public places. And it's, we're trying to decide what's the best course. We're concerned with the health and safety of the community, but we're also tuned into the desires of the community. A lot of people think wearing masks is shouldn't be required, and many people think it should be required. And some people are in the middle. So we're just trying to listen to the community and see what their feelings are about it, and maybe come to some kind of conclusion. You know, if we enact an ordinance, it's going to be, there'd be a requirement to enforce it somehow. And a lot of that enforcement would fall on our police officers. So I'd like to get, some feedback from Chief Knuckles. What are your thoughts about that? If we did in fact have an ordinance requiring face masks?
Okay, I've got him here. Yeah.
Thanks, Mike. I'm going to be honest with you. The police department doesn't want to enforce masks. I'd have a hard time
Sounds good.
getting on board with that for a few reasons.
All right.
With the new Senate bill that was just passed, 20-217, specifically CRS 1321 131, a civil action for deprivation of rights, puts a lot of liability on the officers, the agency, and now the city for use of force incidents. And this is a hot topic. If you get on the internet and you Google, the Washington Post, May 5th, 2020 headline, 3 people charged in the killing of a Family Dollar security guard over mask policy. This is a big issue. And you guys need to think about this ordinance and requiring law enforcement to get out and enforce this. People are not going to respond positively. Another thing that comes with the new Senate bill is Colorado Revised Statute 2431-309, profiling, officer identification, and training. In that statute, all peace officers are required to record demographic information on everybody that they interact with in an enforcement capacity. And I'll tell you that we implemented that, a policy having our officers start tracking that about 2 weeks ago, and we're killing trees. There's already probably close to 2,000 field interview cards that we've filled out tracking this information. So just the amount of time that this will put on the department as far as complying with Senate Bill 2217 is enormous. It's going to be a huge cost to the agency and to the city, most importantly to the taxpayers or your constituents. So I would say I think the city needs to lean more towards the education for compliance rather than, forcing them, but that's my opinion.
Thank you, Chip.
I would like to respectfully disagree on the grounds that, first of all, the people in the counties, the cities around us have mandates about wearing masks. Durango specifically, and a lot of people, myself included, will drive to Durango to do shopping because we feel safe there. I think a lot of people would disagree with me, but a lot of people would agree. So, and I must agree with you about the enforcement. That would be a tremendous burden. But I would like to see us figure out some way. Education alone is not going to work. I'm convinced of that because people have a lot of resources that are not credible, but they're leaning on them. So I think it's really up in the air, but I would lean on the side of being wearing masks.
I would like to say something if possible.
Go ahead, Sue.
Okay. I have COPD. If you look under the American Disability Acts, it says that someone with a breathing issue should not wear a mask. So when I'm on a portable, my oxygen is not as high as what it would be if I was on my oxygen at home. So therefore, I'm already starving for oxygen. And if you put a mask on top of that, then I have big issues breathing. And so for that, myself, I can, and I feel that we all have to doctor ourselves. I don't feel that it's my place or your place or anybody's place to say who wears a mask. I think everybody should try and doctor themselves and not take unnecessary risks.
Thank you, Sue. Orly, how about you? Do you have feelings about masks one way or the other?
The way I look at it with the mask, I would say it's up to the business. If the business puts a mask required, it's up to the people if they want to go in there. If it says mask required, if they don't want to wear a mask, they can go somewhere else and shop. But if it says no mask required, it still has the person has the right to go in there and wear a mask. So I would say it would around here. I would say I would put it in the business side of the whoever runs their businesses, and have them decide how they want to run their business, and that way it gives the person the right to go in or not.
Yeah, I know.
I can agree with that.
Thank you, Orly. Other council members, what are your feelings about the mask or not mask?
Yeah, I've got some comments. So late last night, after reading through like 68 comments at that time, I think we've gotten about that many more today. I just noticed some common threads of concern. And I personally would like, I have 3 questions, right? And I think that Vern, you did a really great job answering my second question, which was, how would we enforce a mask ordinance and what capacity do we have to do so? Thank you for answering that. To me, I recognize that there would be a really huge burden on on the police on trying to enforce something like this. The other question I had, and this is more towards Mike Green, there was a lot of comments about constitutionality, like for it to be enforced, do we even have the ability to do so in any capacity? Like, do we have the ability to even enforce something like this? Or is that power only reserved for like state level?
We're in a state of emergency, so that gives us some leeway to be able to do things for the pendency or the duration of the emergency. So that gives us the legality to do it. The constitutionality, I've got to be honest, I know you can get rid of, or what the words are is you can overlook, violate, whatever you want to call it, constitutional rights during wartime, during emergencies, during things, because it's for the greater good. As to the exact constitutional rights that are violated with masks, I'm not 100% sure. I'm going with the emergency. Yeah, you could do something. I have some, there's some more particularized things, and I guess the enforcement is what really concerns me. Vern just skimmed the surface. Okay, so Ms. Yazzie walks down the street, she's not wearing a mask. What does the officer do? He walks up to you, he says, hi, how you doing? You're not wearing your mask. Do we educate people first, or do we write them a ticket on site? If we educate them first, then okay, somehow we have to track that, okay, I've seen you 2 or 3 times now without a mask, so you're gonna get a ticket. If we just give you a ticket, I can speak to some very interesting interactions with people who refuse to sign the ticket, who refuse to take the ticket over lesser things than this. That can put the officers at risk physically, because some people become very agitated and they attack the officers. So we have all of this new use of force legislation that we're just trying to figure out. So you're looking at that. I've heard that, well, you could just write tickets. Well, that's just writing tickets. And suppose then somebody, which is not unknown to happen in Cortez, it happens sometimes more regularly than I like to, spits on a cop, does something else, things escalate. And so we could do it, but I don't know if we got enough ticket books to write the tickets. Then what happens if people blow us up and they blow us off and they don't show up for court? Do we issue bench warrants? Do we, our current penalties are up to $499 and or 6 months in jail. So, we would need to create a realistic penalty. Some other concerns that come up, which aren't really great, but when you add them all together, we have people who are indigent, poor, can't afford things. So are we going to have masks out there available for the public to give them? So is the officer going to carry a box of masks around, and when he sees people that we know are indigent, that are homeless, what we refer to sometimes as park people who hang out in the park, they aren't always in control of their faculties, and that's going to create some interesting situations. So there's some impediments to realistically enforcing it. What are we going to do with tourists who may not know we have the ordinance? We're going to have to post it somehow, not just on a website, but signage. So there's a lot more to it than just saying, thou shalt not appear in public without a mask. I think we can do it on buildings. If, city buildings like John, or I'm not sure how it was done, but we have a set of rules for coming in a city building that is supposed to be observed. The idea of store owners doing it, that was how I was understanding it was being more effectively done in Durango. I haven't checked with anybody to see if they're writing tickets or not. I checked with someone up in Eagle. They have a similar ordinance and they're not really enforcing it. They just have it. If you have it, but you don't enforce it, you open yourself up to some legal possibilities. If someone says, well, you're not enforcing this, we're going to try and sue you for that. So, I mean, it's a long answer, but there's a lot more to creating an ordinance and then enforcing it. We can do whatever council wants, but there's going to be some problems inherent with the topic and or making it work.
Agreed. And I guess I just have like an anecdote. Like I've reached out to people that live in La Plata, live in Durango, and the ordinance there has not been super effective. Just so council members know, but that was only a handful of people. It doesn't seem to really have a whole lot of teeth. And I guess just playing.
It's not an ordinance, by the way. It's not an ordinance, by the way. I think it's a manager's executive order, is what I saw.
Executive order. What is what authority does that have? Like, is it is it more than an ordinance or zero? Okay. Zero authority.
In my mind, it's less than an ordinance, but it's done under their emergency powers. And it's kind of like the executive orders, and I do mean kind of, that the governor is issuing or the health department is issuing.
Right.
So they're saying, hey, you do this, and it's a down and dirty fast ordinance without going through council.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Okay.
but most of the people in Durango, it's been my experience, are wearing masks. The majority of them that I have seen going into a lot of different stores and establishments. So I don't know how it's being enforced or if it is, but I think as Orly stated, at least the businesses should take the responsibility to require masks.
Mhm.
I think the business should.
Are
Go
you
ahead,
looking
Sue.
then at making it a violation if the businesses don't have mask policies? Or are you just leaving it out there for them to make their own decisions? I guess that's some clarity for me.
I think my clarity would be that the business, if the business is willing to allow people in there without masks, then let them in without masks. If they want masks, tell them, I'm sorry, but you cannot shop here if you don't have a mask on.
I think that's the best you can do, Sue.
So I'm trying to see both sides of this, right? Remain as objective as possible. So I think a lot of the emails assumed that we were going to implement like a mask ordinance that required you to have a mask on 24/7 while in the city. And I don't think that was the thought process behind this conversation. I think it was more focused on places where people gather, where there's a lot of people in there. Now, yeah, I don't know if anybody else thought of it any differently, but that's how I perceived it. Feel free to chime in if you wanted to add any more to that.
Amy, look like you have something on your mind.
Yeah, I have as well. I'm trying to come at this objectively, and I'm really glad the chief had that insight. And especially during this time when we're trying to take, perhaps the police out of jurisdiction some of the times, as far as okay, so obviously if this becomes a mandate, the police would be in charge of this. So what if we nonetheless look at this as an accessibility issue? So not everybody can drive to Durango people need groceries, people need access to government buildings, they need access to pay their utilities, they need access to the hospitals and clinics. We could identify potentially these accessibility, genres or itemize places where vulnerable populations and people who don't want to wear, just identify everybody needs groceries for one, and not everybody can drive to Durango. Would that be forward? We could isolate like we already have with the government, with the city hall, we already have with the hospital. What could that look like?
So would that, So what you're proposing, would that not fall under like the high risk shopper hours, stuff like that? Like you've already got the early morning hour for elderly and folks and whatnot. Would it?
So
Not
bringing it back to
necessarily
accessibility, what if somebody can't make it in those 2 hours or can't make it on that certain day? Does that mean that they just don't get groceries for the week? Anybody?
Rachel, what are your thoughts about the issue?
Okay, I want to comment on Amy's suggestions first. I think that's a good idea because here I'll start my ideas over. Hold on. So the state hasn't mandated and the county has not mandated masks. So I feel like direction comes downwards. So I feel like it might be too much to implement a mandate citywide. Because what has the health department reached out as our caseload being is it growing exponentially? Also, how is it being transmitted? Is it in situations where is it passive, when you're grocery shopping or you're at the restaurant and you get it from a stranger, or is it being passed by being in an intimate situation with someone, saying you're spending hours with them? I feel like we don't have that data yet for our community. Also, I don't know if we have jurisdiction beyond city buildings. I would like to see maybe we mandate it in city buildings to protect the city staff, who we directly oversee. Also, I think we also need to remind businesses and patrons that if a business is requiring masks, then patrons need to respect that and abide if they want to shop there. And then if a business is not requiring them, then they need to respect the patrons that do come in wearing a mask. Because as I understand, the mask is for if you cannot keep the 6-foot distance. And maybe I'm understanding that incorrectly, and a mask should be worn even more than that. But so what can we do then to help that vulnerable community that has accessibility issues? I know we have care funds. Like I would be happy personally to help to go shop for somebody who either doesn't have a car, doesn't know how to use the internet, or doesn't want to be exposed. I know I can guarantee there's probably a group in our community who would be willing to do that for the vulnerable population. Also, what we could do to keep businesses consistent is maybe use that CARES fund to help print standardized signs that say this is a business that requires masks, or this is a business that does not require masks. So it's very obvious before you shop somewhere the risk you're taking. I've also heard in another community that they're using funds to pay like off-duty firefighters to do the shopping and errands essentially for the at-risk populations who either can't do that or are too afraid to.
You guys, Rachel, not to interrupt you, but Safeway, I haven't been to the store since the end of February. Safeway, I pick up my prescriptions out in the parking lot. I call them, I tell them I'm there. They have my debit card and everything on file. They bring my medicine out to me and I take it from there. I can give them a grocery list. Their employees will get my groceries. Same thing, run it through the debit, bring it out, put it in my car.
Okay, that's good to hear. So it sounds like they've already implemented their own plan to help.
Yeah, it's a free service.
Right. There are programs that have come out of this pandemic to really support that at-risk population. It's just a matter of like if they're wanting to stay cooped up in their homes all the time, and I guess I don't know. That's hard because like social isolation is a really huge issue in our community too. But yeah, like the mutual aid, I believe, helps out still with like food delivery for those at risk and elderly. And then we do have like these curbside options, I think, at almost like all of the major grocery stores here.
Yeah, I spoke to the mayor of Durango today. I called him on the phone and I asked him, you know, what Durango is doing, because that seems to be a lot of comparison or contrast between Cortez and Durango. A lot of people are saying, you know, no, there's no masks being required, or masks are being required in public places in Durango, and he agreed that it was an emergency ordinance passed by the city manager. It wasn't a council vote. And I asked him, well, how's it being enforced? And he said that if there is an issue with someone refusing to wear a mask, a citation will be written, you know, like a summons to court. But he also mentioned that no citations have been written yet since this emergency ordinance has been enacted. So it's just it's not being enforced so much. He also mentioned that in Pagosa Springs, the council, instead of passing a mandate, they had a highly recommended mask usage in public places. So that might be something we might consider, instead of having a mandate or a requirement that people wear masks in public places, maybe an encouragement. Do it educationally, encourage people to wear masks in places to prevent spread of the virus. Just something for the council to consider. We're not taking a vote tonight. We're just getting input from the community and from the council members, and it looks like it's working. You know, we're getting pros and cons, and that's what we're here, folks. Any more questions or comments from the council?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on my third question that I came up with while looking through the emails. Is a mask ordinance justified based on our data and what is going on? And I know that maybe not all of you are familiar with what's going on, but if you do have information, that would be great to chime in. I believe at the last clinic that was held by the public health department, I think there were only 3 positives that came out of it. And I think the clinic before that, it was only a handful. And that was probably over 500 or so tests. So do we have justifiable data to really even consider making this a requirement? Anybody have any thoughts?
I'd say how many total positive cases have there been?
Right, so we've had over 2,000. Somebody, I'm not going to dig for it right now, but somebody did the math and it came out to like 0.003% positives out of however many total. And how many are recovered? Like there's only 15 that are active right now, 12.
You're saying that we've had 2,000 positive ones?
Sorry, tests, 2,000 tests, over 2,000 tests.
But how many positives altogether?
80, I think it's 89 right now. I can check real quick.
Okay, so we're essentially looking at, say, 90 over the last 120 days, you know, the last 4 months.
Right, but those are also only the cases that were tested.
Right.
So, and I know that there's like
some
some sort of
testing a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
To answer your question, probably not. We have flattened the curve. We don't have anybody in the hospital. We don't have a big outbreak. And I think that answers your question. Right now, we have what we're doing is working. We just need to continue the social distancing and mask and wash your hands constantly.
Yeah, I might add, see, my wife and I went to the testing at the hospital about a week ago, and she got a call from the state saying she's tested negative, but I haven't gotten my results yet. So I don't know. I may be positive. I'll find out when.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not.
I know.
And I think that part of that, Mike, is that there is a backlog now happening at the state level, especially for the company that's processing all of the tests that have been sent up. They are getting a much larger influx of tests to the state.
Yeah.
And you should reach out
Yeah,
if you don't get a response soon.
Yeah, I got the number that Gail got, and they're busy, and I took a number and I'm still waiting, but we'll see how it goes. I'll keep you posted.
So I think for me as a councilwoman on this council, I had come up with a set of criteria that I wanted to analyze and see if we're like doing a mask ordinance was a necessity. And I said to myself that if I couldn't check off these boxes, that I would not be in support of an ordinance.
Okay.
So I'm feeling at this point that I can't justify us having an ordinance, but that's not to say that there's not a possibility that what if Montezuma County does explode with cases? Like, who knows? Like, it could still happen. So I don't think it should be completely taken off like the back burner or whatnot. But I think at this time, I feel like I personally can't justify issuing a mask ordinance.
We're
make one
running.
more.
Okay, go ahead, David.
One more point. We are surrounded by some potential bombshells. Arizona, New Mexico have gone to very strict requirements because their numbers have shot up almost out of sight. People will be coming, as they do now, from other places with stricter requirements to shop here. Now that may be good for our economy, but it is not so good for our exposure. So some kind of requirement, albeit the business's responsibility or the city's responsibility, something, we need to make a statement, I believe, that we take this very seriously, because there are a lot of people that obviously aren't.
I agree with you, David, on that. I think we need to take a stance and say that we do I do strongly encourage mask wearing. I also want to trust the constituency to make the right decision. Like, of course, we just had our businesses closed for several months and they just opened up again. Imagine, there's not positive evidence like either way, whether or not masks are effective or not effective. But what if you could make that, could take that step and do that one extra precaution if you are able to, maybe your health conditions allow you to provide an extra layer of protection as you go into businesses. Because what if those employees get sick? It takes 2 employees to get COVID for a business to shut down again. And I wonder if they would even be able to open up again after that point. And then on the other side of that, if we don't enforce this right and we do blow up, our cases explode, then the businesses are going to shut down anyway.
Exactly.
So I think we should take a stance. I personally think people should wear masks if they are capable of doing so. I don't think it should have been political. I think it should have been a matter of respect, because you care about those businesses so much why can't you take an extra step about helping to help them stay open? And that's, sorry, I'm fired. I'm fired up.
We have one phone in comment from a Stacy Harrison. Stacy, can you hear?
Do we open the workshop for public meeting, for public comment?
Well, probably not, because we're behind on our schedule. There will be public comment in the regular agenda. And if you folks can save your comments till the public comment period in the regular agenda, we'll take them. No ordinance is going to be passed tonight. No, we're just gathering information, getting input from the city council and the people. So I'd encourage people to continue sending emails to the city clerk and to the council, voicing your opinions on mask usage. If there's no further comment, we have to consider the next item on the agenda. We have a.
I got one more thing, Mike.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Orly.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I don't think we need no ordinance or whatever, but that's what I was commenting. I still think it's let the citizens that own the businesses see how they want to run their business. And I'd hate to put anything in paper and mandating. I mean, because one thing I'm not doing is running their business. If I was running the business, whatever, I had to say so. But I still think putting everything in black and white, I don't think I'll cut it.
Okay. Thank you for your input, Orly, and thank you, council, for all your input. We have to break from the workshop session here for executive session. We'll put the workshop Zoom on pause, and the council members will vacate themselves from the Zoom meeting and go to the executive session. And after the executive session, we'll return to the workshop session. And then at 7:30, the regular agenda will continue. So I just want to let the people in the audience know that what's going on, and tune in at 7:30.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello?
Hello?
Okay, this is Mike here.
copy of the
Right.
statute. The district attorney's office you know, it's not like I'm offering you something and I think it's 50. They're pretty close to what our numbers and
Okay.
Okay. And you're just looking for your right here. Just click that. Okay.
Oh.
It's already clicked. And you need to mute yourself so we're not. There you go. Exactly.
Okay, we're back to the work session. I'll make an announcement. The time is now 7:30. The work session is now completed. The executive session has been concluded. Participants were Rachel Medina, Arlena Yazzie, David Rainey, John Doherty, Mike Green, Mike Levy, myself, Orly Lucero, and Sue Betts. For the record, if any person who participated in the executive session believes that any substantial discussion of the matters not included in the motion to go into the executive session occurred during the executive session or any improper motion occurred during the executive session in violation of the open meetings law, I would ask you, did you state your concerns for the record? Seeing none, we conclude the work session, and it's 7:32 right now, and we'll continue on with the regular agenda. This is a Cortez City Council regular meeting, Tuesday,